CJ Stroud starting the season on the bench. These national media types are something else. But is there more to the story? Let's talk about it right now in the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do.
Welcome to the locker room, the number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610 and the Odyssey app. I actually just got back from the Texans Fan Council. A lot of you might have heard about the Texans Fan Council. It's basically just a thing where they listen to the fans. They let the fans know what's going on. This was one of a few meetings that is going to take place before the start of the season. Got to meet a lot of listeners, a lot of viewers out there. There was just an overview of merch, etc. Nothing like groundbreaking, but they're focusing on listening to the people. And I think if you're a Texans fan, you will enjoy that. I enjoyed seeing Texans fans from all areas of the city. It was a very diverse group. There were a lot of different takes. There were opinions on what some liked, what some didn't like. But it seems like, you know, they are doing a hell of a job of listening to people and not eliminating their past, but making the future better and getting stuff excited. So I think you'll get excited about that. Don't know if you'll get excited about this, and didn't even know this was a thing, but could CJ Stroud start the season on the bench? I was looking at the ESPN win predictions for every NFL's team. And ESPN put this together. They had their stats experts, so their sports betting analysts were discussing this. Aaron Dolan was the one who did the Texans talk. And Aaron was talking about the Texans win-loss total. And Aaron does a really good job with numbers and stats and stuff like that. But she said something that I thought was pretty interesting. Now, they projected the Texans at 6.3 wins, with the over-under being 5-5, which has actually gone up to 6-5. So the Texans have actually gained a win since the draft. But this is what she said that was amusing, I guess I'll say. She said the Texans had 3 wins last season, which was the worst mark in the league. Yes, that's true. It's not the same roster, though, not even close. All wins came against divisional opponents. Will Davis Mills or CJ Stroud be the starting quarterback? This is the thing about national media when it comes to talking about the Texans. And this is a stats expert, but this is the thing about the national media when it comes to talking about the Texans. If you're we've got to be real and we've got to be realistic, and that's what we try to do in here. If you're a national media type and your job is to cover all 32 teams, you're not going to know much about the Texans. You're not even going to really probably follow the Texans that much. I mean, let's keep it real. They've won 7 games in the last 2 years, so you're probably not going to follow that. I don't even think, like, if there was going to be this quarterback competition with CJ Stroud and someone else, I actually think it would probably be Case Keenum. So I don't even understand how that would even come up. But let's just get into why or why not CJ Stroud would or would not start the season on the bench. The why would be that he's not ready. And the Texans feel that the other guys in camp are better equipped to be able to start than him. If that's the case, then I'm not going to write him off, but that would be pretty troubling. And furthermore, if the Texans even felt comfortable with the possibility of putting Davis Mills on the field in week 1, they wouldn't have made the trades that they did. The combo trade for CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. So that doesn't even make sense. Case Keenum was having trouble getting on the field for Drew Lock or whoever the hell he's been competing with lately. So you draft CJ Stroud number 2 overall. It's not like you have Alex Smith holding it down. And it's not like you have Brett Favre holding it down for Aaron Rodgers. If you were willing to trade that much, I find it hard to believe that there would even be a possibility of CJ Stroud not starting over Davis Mills. But the national media doesn't follow the Texans, which is fine. Which is fine. The other thing is, I've heard the Tom Savage, Deshaun Watson type of comparison. I will say this. I don't feel as confident about CJ as I did Deshaun. But Bill O'Brien's not coaching this team. And there's no quarterback on this roster unless you factor in Case's previous experience that just has like some sort of system advantage. And I don't even the system in which Case Keenum ran, which is a similar offense, I don't think it's going to be the same as Bobby Slowick's. So these quarterbacks are learning this system at the same time. A lot of times when you see someone hold it down for a rookie, it's because they have system knowledge. The coach trusts them a little bit. Bobby Slowick has no history with Case Keenum. He has no history with Davis Mills. And quite frankly, he probably had a pretty big hand in saying okay on CJ Stroud. So I find it hard to believe. So I think it's absolutely silly. I can't believe that there wasn't like some sort of editing where they just threw out the win total without that. We don't know if Davis Mills or CJ Stroud's going to start. It just sounds a little bit freaking silly. By the way, shout out to the Astros. What a comeback. That looked like a hell of a loss. What a freaking comeback that is. They're on fire right now. 5 games above 500. Did not see them getting that dub. Not a good start for Mr. French, but they got the dub. Shout out to the Astros. Good vibes going on with them. Not so good with the Rockets right now after last night. Absolute disaster that was. I want to talk about some guys that could be bubble guys on the roster this upcoming training camp, and guys who may not be on the team when the season starts. And let's start with Davis Mills. Do you think Davis Mills is going to be on the opening week roster? Assuming that Case Keenum is here, do the Texans keep 3 quarterbacks and do they keep Davis Mills? Or could there be a backup quarterback competition between Davis Mills and Case Keenum? Like, could there be a legit quarterback competition? I tend to think, and I don't know because I haven't seen Davis Mills in this role, but I tend to think that when it comes to the backup quarterback in this situation with Case Keenum, that he would be a better resource for CJ Stroud than Davis Mills. He's battle tested. He's got system knowledge, although it was a different coach. And in a perfect world, your backup quarterback doesn't play in year 1. He's the guy that's kind of shoulder to shoulder when the quarterback walks off the sidelines. They're looking at the iPad. They're talking. You see quarterback coach Gerard Johnson. You see offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. They're talking. And Case Keenum's right there in the ear of CJ Stroud. Now, if it were a legit competition and you just wanted the best guy, maybe Davis Mills would have a chance to beat out Case Keenum. But I think in that situation, in this situation with where it's common knowledge that you want CJ Stroud on the field, you can almost make a case that even if Davis Mills might have a little bit more in the tank right now and he's better on the field, that maybe Case Keenum is a more valuable asset at backup quarterback, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times you don't want the backup quarterback to play. Most times you don't want the backup quarterback to play, but you want him to be a good resource. You want him to be able to run the system. I think Davis Mills is very much on the bubble. I could see an instance where Davis Mills goes through preseason. Maybe he has a really good preseason. Then all of a sudden you see Davis Mills for like a day 3 pick somewhere. And someone decides they want to kick the tires on Davis Mills. Whether or not they keep a third quarterback will be interesting. I could see that, but I could also see an instance where Davis Mills plays his way into another team. I'm actually really, and this is just me, I'm actually really, we've heard John McClain kind of bitch about CJ Stroud not having media availability. I'm really excited to hear what Davis Mills says when they're at a mini camp. They haven't even mentioned him by name. How long do we see Davis Mills? What is Davis Mills going to say? What's his mood? Started earlier than you would have wanted him to start. Had a good rookie season last year, just kind of not good. I want to hear what Davis Mills has to say. I could be alone in that. Elbert says, appreciate you for coming through. Subscribe, like, my friend. I think you keep all three, if only because of potential injury, but CJ Stroud will and should start the season. I concur. Mills, the clipboard messiah, J-Rock says. Could very well be. Could very well be. Carolyn Adams says, I miss that David Carr. He sent shivers down my spine. Don't know what the hell that means. Do not know what the hell that means. YM says, any chance Devontae Adams leaves the Raiders? I know he definitely don't want to be there. I don't know. Question for me would be, would you want to trade what it takes to get Devontae Adams? Like, what is the price? Do you trade your first round pick next year to get Devontae Adams? I would say no to that at this point. Maybe you get to a point where you're in good enough position to where you feel comfortable about your quarterback, you feel comfortable about your surrounding cast to where you make one of those trades like Buffalo did with Diggs, like Miami did with Cheetah last year. But with where the Texans are in the process, they're definitely going to need to probably in the offseason next year improve the wide receiver position. But trading for Devontae Adams right now, just don't really see that. YM says, I think you start Davis Mills week 1 and let CJ view the field from the sideline. Definitely would help him see the difference between college and NFL defenses and would kill his confidence against the Ravens. I disagree with that. I don't think you babysit him and say, hey, we're going to hold you out against Baltimore and then we're going to throw you out against the Colts. Like, where do you draw the line if that's your line of thinking? You don't trust CJ to go out there against Baltimore, so you just throw in Davis Mills or Case Keenum to the Wolves? I mean, I would probably bet that CJ Stroud's the better guy too. Eventually, he's going to have to get hit in the mouth. He's going to have to understand what the NFL game's about. That's what preseason's for. That's what practice is for, to show him the difference. That's how you learn the difference between the NFL and college. So the whole, let's move him along and I don't want to throw him to the Wolves against Baltimore. Okay. But what are you really accomplishing there? Especially when we've already established that Davis Mills isn't worth a damn. And Case Keenum, quite frankly, he's just 100% a backup right now. I don't understand that. Goyo Falcon says it doesn't matter which QB the Texans would have had last year. They would have failed. The Texans had terrible coaching, plus Mills didn't have any help. He sucked, though. Like, I don't really like that's not – you can say that about a lot of bad football teams. He sucked. I mean, he was better the year before. So what do? You just roll it back with Davis Mills because it wasn't great. He sucked. He was as bad as the coaching. He was trash. Had a crappy year. He'll tell you that. Maybe he won't. There were times where Davis Mills kind of sounded a little bit delusional at the podium, but he was trash. He was skipping rocks. So, yeah, he had a bad squad around him. So what? He's also got a lot of limitations. So, yeah, I don't really know what that means. You want to start him? Cebu, if this passing game doesn't work out, but Pierce takes a big step forward, I'm still getting very excited. I don't know that Pierce needs to take a big step forward. I think the blocking in front of him needs to take a step forward. The scheme and the creativity of getting him ready needs to take a big step forward. And maybe you're talking about the production, but less might be more with Dameon Pierce. I could easily see a situation. I don't know when you are going to draft Dameon Pierce in your fantasy league. I'm sure we'll talk about that later as the offseason goes, but I could see a situation where Pierce is getting, around 15 carries a game and he's fresh for the end of games and they're figuring out stuff to do. But yeah, the Pep Hamilton offense, the line was bad, but Mills could maybe be a good backup. I can agree with Goyo Falcon on that. Yeah, I'm not writing him off as far as being a backup. He was bad. Look, here's the other thing about Davis Mills. Whether or not he's there or not, he was a third-round pick. I know that it was kind of a high pressure situation where maybe we kind of got blinded in what we expected because we were used to having Deshaun Watson for a few years. But Davis Mills was a 3rd-round pick. Kellen Mond has been on 3 teams, I think, since maybe 2. He's been cut, and he was drafted ahead of Davis Mills. So it's rare that 3rd-round picks start. I think there's only one in the league right now that starts. I think it's Russell Wilson. Dak Prescott's a 4th-round pick. But he was fighting an uphill battle to begin with. If Davis Mills turns into a good backup quarterback, then that wasn't a bad – it was worth kicking the tires. Thing is, he wasn't even supposed to start. Tyrod Taylor gets hurt, and then he's in for Tyrod Taylor, and he played better than we expected. So maybe some people expected a little bit more in the next year from him than they probably should have. But Davis Mills was fine. Miguel's asking about Clowney. I don't want Clowney. I'm the biggest Clowney guy there was. I felt they should have franchise tagged him and at least like let him play in 2019. Maybe even pay him and see what happens. At this point, Clowney's just hopping around teams. He quit at the end of last year with the Browns. So I'm kind of out on that. You are right, Im. Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, and Russell Wilson. I think Russell's 3rd, and then Cousins and Dak. I think you are correct there. I'm good on Clowney. I know. I mean, if they decide to bring him in, that would mean D'Amico thinks he can get something out of him. But I'm just kind of good on Clowney. Terry Kendrick called him an energy vampire. You are crazy. So some other guys on the bubble. Brevin Jordan, I just don't see Brevin Jordan being on this team next year. He was a healthy scratch last year. Again, a 5th-round pick. Can't catch the ball consistently. Has had trouble staying on the field, whether it's being unhealthy or being healthy scratch. Can't block. You've brought in a tight end who can also block in Beck. Quintariano, I actually think Quintariano is a really good player. And you brought in Dalton Schultz, and you're signing other tight ends. I don't see it for Brevin Jordan. I would be absolutely shocked if Brevin Jordan has a significant role on this team. I think that ship could eventually sell. I like Brevin Jordan. He's a funny guy, but Brevin Jordan, I think he might be more on the bubble than anyone on this list. Roy Lopez and Kurt Heinisch, 2 other guys that are on the bubble. They've improved on the interior. I think at the very least, I don't think there's a chance that you see both of those guys on the squad. They're going to have to compete with each other. Roy Lopez needs to put on some weight. He got too skinny last year. And it's kind of Davis Mills like with Roy Lopez as well, in that he was a starter his first year. The second year, maybe we expected a little bit too much from him, and he kind of came down to earth. So somewhere in between what we saw those 2 years is what we're going to see from Roy Lopez. And he could actually become a better player when he's not called upon to be a starter. But I think Roy Lopez and Kurt Heinisch, I don't see any way in which both of those guys are on the roster. Jerome Kick saying, here we go with Beck. You don't think Beck is relevant when we're talking about Brevin Jordan? I bring up Beck. Beck is a good blocker. He's going to be, maybe your main fullback is going to be a tight end. Jerome has like some sort of like obsession with the Anthony Beck thing. Shout out to you, Jerome. But when I'm talking about Brevin Jordan, is Beck not relevant? You want me to, like, you think Brevin Jordan's going to beat out Anthony Beck? You don't think Anthony Beck coming in impacts Brevin Jordan? Come on, man. Not sitting here saying he's freaking Owen Daniels. That's kind of relevant there, my friend. Christian Kirksey is another guy I think's on the bubble. The money that you save releasing Christian Kirksey is actually identical to what you brought in Shaq Griffin on. I'm surprised he's still here. I think eventually they get rid of him. I would be I've said this multiple times. Great dude. We've talked to him. We've interviewed him. We've had him on the show. He's kind of been one of the stand-up guys in the locker room. Teammates seem to like him, but I just don't see how D'Amico Ryans puts on the tape and says, man, I love what 58's giving me. mean, let's be serious. He's made a couple of decent plays, but when it comes to the run game, when it comes to guarding guys in the pass game, I don't understand why Kirko is still here. And if he is, I'll be surprised. I guess I'll trust D'Amico's evaluation. But when you tell me you can save $4 million to cut a guy like Kirko just seems like a guy that you can go find on the street. No disrespect. That's what it seems like. And when you factor in the linebackers that they've brought in the offseason, the guy that they drafted, To'o, I just don't see why he's here. So I would be shocked. I could see Kirksey not even being in camp. And if he is, I'll be surprised. And I would love to know what exactly D'Amico was thinking of there. Joel Blue says that Schultz is a top 5 tight end. He's a top 5 receiving tight end the last 3 years. I don't know if he's a top 5 tight end in the league. He has improved his blocking, but top 5 tight end, I could probably name 5 that I'd rather have, but he has been very, very productive. We do have to also keep in mind that he's been on a team where one year you've had Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. You've had situations where you've had CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, Michael Gallup. So he's kind of had a little bit of open field. If these receivers don't perform, there could be times where teams are actually focusing on Dalton Schultz. So we'll see what happens. And as my man brought up on this is a new system, and this is not Cesar. He was top 5 on the Cowboys. This is a new system, and you might have to block a little bit more. So we'll see what happens. I always call him Anthony Beck. I know it's Andrew Beck. I'm an idiot. But that's my Longhorn guy. Tom Herman ran him into the ground. But yeah, I always say Anthony. I go back to like Jets days, but yeah, Andrew Beck. Texas Boss is asking what the coaches see in Eric Murray. I feel bad for Eric Murray because Eric Murray is a guy that belongs on an NFL roster. He didn't belong making the money that Jack and Bill gave him. And they restructured Eric Murray's contract. It's more symbolic of what he is as a player. But I think a lot of fans just have a sour taste in their mouth when they're just looking at him the same way you did when you watched David Johnson, because you knew that Jack and Bill didn't know what they were doing, and they gave him the deal he had. There's no guarantee Eric Murray makes this squad, but at this point, his contract more so symbolizes what he is supposed to be in the NFL. Brown Chubby Bear, shout out to BCB. If Kirko goes to the mic by week 4, Henry T or Perriman, I suspect Perriman will start out as Mike, right? I would think so. I mean, I think that would probably be the plan. I'm just going to be shocked if Kirko's back, especially on this contract. Miguel says, am I going to the Texans opener? Come on, man. Of course, I'll be there. Shout out to everyone's out there. Come by, say hi. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. Again, I was at the Texans fan council. It's going to be fun. They got some good stuff planned. The graphics are sick. That's the one thing I will say. The Jumbotron graphics are going to be really, really nice. Sam asks if Cashman's making the 53. You bet your ass Cashman's making the 53. You damn right about that. He's going to be one of your best special teams player, and you're probably going to see him on the field a little bit more. So abso-freaking-lutely, I think Cashman makes the 53 for sure. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Subscribe, like. No matter what happens, just remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in this together. Have a good night, folks.
You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do.